5. Dog carcass in alley this morning. Tire tread on burst stomach. This city's afraid of me. I've seen its true face. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood. And when the drains finally scab over, all the vermin will drown. The accumulated filth of all their sex and murder will foam up around their waists. And all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No." Now the whole world stands on the brink, staring down into bloody hell. All those liberals and intellectuals and smooth talkers. And all of a sudden nobody can think of anything to say. Beneath me, this awful city, it screams like an abattoir full of retarded children. And the night reeks of fornication and bad consciences.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I am one of your Watchmen hosts, Perry Constantine.
And I'm your other Watchmen host, Derrick Ferguson.
And Derrick, how are you feeling now? You were a little under the weather recently.
Yeah, I'm feeling much better now, as I was telling you and our friends on Facebook, in our Facebook group. I had some kind of nasty nasal infection or bacterial infection in my nasal passages, whatever you want to call it. I thought it was just a cold, but turned to be a little bit more serious than it was. But don't worry, folks. I went to the doctor. She gave me antibiotics and stuff like that. And I've been taking them. And yeah, I've been feeling much better. So yeah, it's taken care of. Folks, if you're sick, go to the doctor.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, how, in America, especially guys, we're kind of indoctrinated to say that, just ride it out, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and trust me, folks, that kind of attitude will kill you.
Absolutely.
It will. We were just talking about it. I mean, I've known people that have come to work and they said, "Oh yeah, well I feel a little dizzy," but I thought it, and turned out they had a heart attack, and and all kinds of other nonsense going on. It's not worth it. Take care of your health. It sounds like a cliche, but it's the truth. If you don't have your health, you can't do anything else. Because I was sick enough that, and really, you know what? I was saying this to somebody else, that if I'm going to be sick, I'd rather be sick for like 2 or 3 days flat on my back and get it over with, because I was sick enough that I could still get around, but I wasn't enjoying getting around.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that kind of sick is really no fun.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. You sound a lot better too. Like I was saying, I wouldn't know you were sick at all from the way you sound right now.
Yeah. I mean, I sound much better. I feel much better. And again, thank you to everybody listening to this who was, that communicated with me on Facebook and privately to ask about my health. Thank you very much. I appreciate your concern. I don't take it for granted. And I'm feeling much better now, and I'm taking care of myself. So thank you.
And we're going to give your voice a workout, because I think today we're going to get some fireworks going, because I think you and I have very different opinions on this movie, and that is Watchmen.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say. But
Watchmen. Okay, well, let's say right off the bat, Watchmen is a controversial property anyway. If you're talking about the movie, or if you're talking about the graphic novel, or the various spin-offs that came out of it.
Right.
So yeah, Watchmen is a pretty controversial subject anyway. I don't know anybody who doesn't have a strong opinion one way or the other about Watchmen.
Well, that's actually a good place to start off. So, what was your history coming into Watchmen, the property in general? Like, because I know you were collecting comics back then. Did you read it in real time, or was it something you picked up later? What was your experience with it?
No, I picked it up in real time. I got the individual issues as they came out. Folks, I'm that old, and later on I purchased the graphic novel, of course. But yeah, I read it in real time and didn't know anything about Alan Moore. You know,
that was going to be my next question, if you were a Moore fan going in or not.
No. My knowledge of British comic book writers is woefully lacking. Mostly, I know them through recommendation from people like you and other people who are, oh, you ought to read this guy, you ought to read this guy, you ought to read that guy. So I didn't know anything about Dave Gibbons. I didn't know anything about Alan Moore. So I went into the property cold, not knowing anything about the characters at all. Matter of fact, I didn't even learn until after I had read the complete miniseries, maxi series rather, because it was 12 issues when it first came out, that this was originally supposed to be a property about the Charlton comic book characters, such as The Question and Thunderbolt and a whole bunch of other characters that DC had bought from Charlton Comics.
Right. Yeah, and DC had acquired all those rights, and Alan Moore came up with this proposal about using the Charlton characters, and DC really liked the proposal, but as they developed it further, they kind of realized, well, wait a second, this is going to pretty much render those characters unusable going forward, and we kind of still want to be able to use them in some way. So based on that, they decided, you know what, let's just, they went to Moore and they said, hey, how about you just create new characters based on the Charlton characters, and then you tell your story that way, and then we'll keep the Charlton characters because we want to use them in other stuff.
Yeah, which actually I can understand from a business standpoint, because they probably paid a lot of money for those characters.
Yeah.
And okay, well, we really don't want to just use up these characters all in one shot.
Right.
We'd rather, and actually, since Moore was now able to create original characters that were analogs of these characters, he had more freedom to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But now these were more or less, these are new characters. And but when I was reading it, and like I said, it's a different experience when it was coming out every month, because you were on the edge of your seat, because Watchmen truly was something new. It was something different. It was an adult, mature look at superheroes. And when I say adult, mature, I don't just mean sex and cursing and violence, which is usually, unfortunately, what adult and mature has come to mean when we're talking about superheroes, whether it be on TV or in the comic books now or in the movies.
Right.
That's what they associate. Me, when you talk about mature adult themes in superhero cinema or literature, boy, we're awful high-minded here. I tend to think
quick, tell a fart joke.
Yeah. Okay, so when you talk about dealing with mature adult themes, I'm thinking about stuff like politics. I'm thinking about psychology. I'm thinking about finances, medicine. How the concept of superhero beings affect everything in the world, not just he can punch his fist through this guy's chest and ooh, isn't that great? No.
And showing all the gore and everything in graphic detail.
Right? Yeah, exactly. No. Well, so I guess if you're 12 years old, that is adult and mature.
But that's the thing. I mean, that's kind of the idea that a lot of creators took from Watchmen, is they took the wrong idea for it, because Watchmen is violent, but looking back, it's not as violent as you might have expected from its reputation. It's not. And it's really dark, isn't. But it's also, again, it's not as dark as, again, from its reputation you might think. Like, these are not characters who are grim the entire time. There are some pretty funny moments in Watchmen, actually.
Yeah, there actually is. I mean, and okay, one thing that I wanted to say and just get off my chest right away is that Watchmen and Frank Miller's The Dark Knight. Okay, these are two properties that have been criticized and maligned, and people have said, oh, well, Frank Miller and Alan Moore, they're to blame for the way the superheroes are now. No, they're not.
Right.
Because Frank Miller has turned into a crotchety old man. We all know that. And he's gone half cracked. I don't know what shit he's on these days, but he needs to lay off of it, whatever it is. But when he created his version of our beloved Batman, that's what he was doing. He was just creating his version.
Right.
He didn't intend for that Batman to be the Batman for the next 40 years.
And in fact, I just went through, because I reread Watchmen when we planned on doing this episode, and because of all the hype going on around the TV show. And so I bought the book from Comixology, and I reread it for the first time in, I think 10 years. And then I also, decided, I'm like, well, while I'm at it, why don't I reread Dark Knight Returns again? So I reread that as well. And one of the things that struck me, and we can talk about this more in detail when we eventually get to the Dark Knight Returns animated movie, is that the Dark Knight Returns, it's very satirical.
It is. It's a satire.
Yeah, he was not intending for that thing to be taken seriously. In fact, he was using it as a commentary, which Moore and Gibbons were also doing with Watchmen. It was more a commentary on the comics industry itself than it was an attempt to create a new way of telling superhero stories.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really not fair to blame Frank Miller or Alan Moore, because creators who followed after them totally misunderstood the point of what they were trying to do with the material. They just said, oh, okay, well, all superheroes now, okay, this is how they should be. And, okay, well, Batman, this is why we have had a Batman who has not been a detective in 40 years. Right. Which is what Batman actually was. He was a detective. Now he's a guy that just beats the piss out of, his opponents. And he went through superior firepower, which is not what Batman is supposed to be all about. But that's what we got. Thanks to people reading, just the same way that we got Frank Miller's Daredevil was regurgitated for the next 30, 40 years by people. They looked at, oh, okay, well, that's Daredevil. That's who he's supposed to be. And nobody didn't want to do anything else.
I mean, I think the only one since Frank Miller who's tried to do something different with Daredevil was Mark Waid.
Yeah.
Which, just a brief side note, but if you guys haven't read Mark Waid's Daredevil, it's amazing. It's not at all like the type of Daredevil you'd expect. It's very unique. And again, there was nothing wrong with Frank Miller's Daredevil. And it was wonderful, especially at the time.
He completely revitalized the whole character, who most people had just written off. They said, yeah, Daredevil, yeah, okay, ho-hum, big deal. But he just completely transformed that character. But again, that was his version of Daredevil. He never said that, okay, well, you have to come after me, and for the next 40 years, this is the only Daredevil that you're supposed to do. He never said that.
And as someone who was living in New York at the 70s, you can probably attest to how much what was going on outside his window he basically replicated in the comic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things that cracked me up about the Daredevil TV series on Netflix, as much as I loved it, don't get me wrong. Now, if we're talking about the gold standard of superhero TV shows, the Daredevil is up in the top 10. But it always cracked me up in that even though it was set in modern times, in other words, in the 21st century, it was portraying a Hell's Kitchen that hasn't existed since the 1970s. As a matter of fact, they don't even call it Hell's Kitchen. It hasn't been called Hell's Kitchen in 20 years, I don't think.
No, it's called Clinton now, isn't it?
Yeah, Clinton. Yeah. It's been totally gentrified. It's nothing like that anymore. But but basically that's what Frank Miller did. He was just portraying the neighborhood as it was at the time that he was doing it.
Right.
So, but I mean, times change, and I don't know. Me as a creator myself, if I look at something, I look at how I can make it different. I just don't want to just regurgitate what the guy before me did. Right. Otherwise, what's the point in me doing it?
Now, I I came to Watchmen in a little bit different because, I started collecting comics in the late 90s, and back then, we had Wizard magazine. So, I read Wizard every month, and one of the things that they had talked about is that was my entry point into a lot of stuff, and they talked about things like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. So that's how I eventually came to discover those books. But I was like 16, 17 at the time, so I took the wrong message from it as well. And in fact, when I read Watchmen, my thought going in was, okay, that was interesting, but I didn't really understand why it was so great. And I kind of took the wrong message as well. It's like, okay, well, you've got these dark heroes, and, Rorschach is the hero of this story and all that. And then later, like when I'm looking back at it now, and, I just said I reread it, and one of the first things I didn't do the first time, which I did this time, was I read all the supplementary stuff, all the excerpts at the back of the issue. So the excerpts from Hollis Mason's book, the excerpts from The New Frontiersman.
Yeah, Behind the Mask.
Behind the Mask, yeah. All that stuff. I read through all of that this time, and it opens up a whole new view of the world that you're reading in the comics. And I also, at the time, I didn't understand the point of the Black Freighter interludes. And again, this time, I paid more attention to them, and it makes so much more sense. It all fits together, and when you come back and you're looking at it from a different perspective, and when you already know the whole story and you're able to pay more attention, you notice so much stuff going on. Like, every single panel is filled with subtext in that book, and I gained a whole new appreciation for it, and I'm reading it, and I'm just like, yeah, I can see why people say this is the greatest comic book ever created.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, this is like the Citizen Kane of comic books.
Right.
I mean, this is one of the things that you can point to, and you can say, okay, this changed the game forever. Because, yeah, comics was never the same after that. Because, again, as you said, and you said it so accurately, it was all that supplementary stuff that came along with it that added and gave weight and depth and texture to this world. I mean, with these extraordinary beings who okay. And here's the funniest thing about Watchmen. They really aren't superheroes.
No.
Yeah, they wear costumes and stuff like that, but they're more like Daredevil or Robin or something like that. Like they're costume acrobats and martial artists. The only real person who had, Ozymandias, he does have kind of like superpowers, but, the only person who was really.
But even still, those powers they're gained through just regular human activity, like just extreme.
Right, exactly. He's like a super Bruce Lee.
Right, exactly.
That's how I've always seen him. He's like a super Bruce Lee. The only guy, the only super being who we have is Dr. Manhattan, of course. Which, again, because he's the only one that's really got superpowers, that makes a greater difference than if everybody has superpowers.
Right.
Because now we're seeing how all of these different characters interact with him, and as a matter of fact, we see how the whole world is changed because of him. One of the best things that I love about the movie and the book, in that we see how he wins the Vietnam War practically single-handedly.
Right.
And that changes things because, then Vietnam, of course, becomes things like the 52nd state or 53rd state or something like that. Yeah, 51st, yeah, of the United States, So, yeah, just the fact of one super being so completely changes the course of this whole world, that when you read that and then you go back and then you look at, okay, you can't go back and look at the Marvel and DC universe in the same way, because now you've just seen how one super being so totally changes the world. Well, how come in the DC universe with 1 million super beings and, everything is everything?
Well, that's one of the things that I realized about it going back is it's not just Vietnam, but it's so many other things. Like there's a ripple effect with the creation of Dr. Manhattan. I mean, he creates electric cars. There are no gas-powered cars in this universe. And
exactly.
You realize when you go back and you look at it, you're like, oh, that's not a fire hydrant. That's an electric car charger.
Yeah, that's a car charger, right.
Or there's the restaurant that Dan and Laurie go to where the waiter is serving a four-legged chicken.
Yeah.
And just like all these little things. Plus, because of the success of Vietnam, Nixon was able to get presidential term limits abolished. So now he's in his third or fourth term as president.
I mean, there was no Watergate. Mm-hmm. He wasn't impeached. Everybody loves him.
In fact, in the comic, there's a reference to that when the comedian makes a joke about Woodward and Bernstein were easier than this.
Yeah.
So you get the feeling that, what happened was the comedian was sent to kill them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we see that he was the guy that, killed John Kennedy.
Right. Now, that's something that I'll get into when we start getting into the movie because, I'll touch on it now, but just so I don't forget. But one of the things I liked about the comic book is they never explicitly mention things like this. Like, the comedian, he makes jokes about Kennedy. But it's never directly stated that, yes, he killed Kennedy. But here in that opening montage, which in some ways it's a really cool montage. I think it's very stylish. It's very well shot. I like the use of the Dylan music with it. But one of the problems I have with it is that scene of him killing Kennedy because it shoves it right in your face and it spells it out clear as day, which is one of the... And this kind of sums up one of the big problems I have with the comic versus the movie is that the comic trusts you to figure stuff out on your own. The movie shoves it in your face.
Okay. I can see where you're going with this, and I understand where you're going with this. But again, I have to go back, as I always do, and I have to say, they making this movie for a general audience. That,
True.
And a lot of people didn't read. Matter of fact, a lot of people, I remember when I went to the movies to see this, and a lot of people, like, as usual, when these superhero movies, when they come out, I have friends and family call me and say, well, who are these people? Where did they come from? How come I've never heard of them? Because most people hadn't heard of Watchmen.
Right.
And they didn't know. So, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying that they put that scene in there so people will know, okay, we don't care how we portray this guy to you in this movie. He is not a nice guy. Mm-hmm. They let you know right off the bat that he's not a nice guy. And
now that's just one minor pet peeve and like a whole list of things I have with this movie. But before we start getting too much into that, what was your feeling when you saw the movie when it first came out? Because I know with me, when I saw it, it had been a while since I'd read Watchmen. Even at that point, I hadn't really picked up on all this stuff. But I watched it and I thought, okay, that was all right. There's a lot of stuff they seemed like there was missing because it was the theatrical cut. And then later when the ultimate cut came out with, which is what I watched for this and the one I own, it had the Black Freighter stuff in there and it had the whole director's cut. And I watched the whole thing. And after I finished watching it, I'm like, all right, like it's okay, but it felt like there was something hollow about it. Like there was something that it was just missing for it, which I kind of realized after I read the book and then reread the book and rewatched it again this last time. But at the time, I did feel like it was good. It wasn't bad. Like I don't think it was terrible. But it felt like there was something off about it. What was your feeling when you saw it the first time?
When I saw it the first time, I actually, when I was talking about it with friends of mine, including Tom DJ.
Oh yeah, I think you guys did an episode on this on Better in the Dark, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Matter of fact, I was thinking about digging it out, and after you put this one up, and we'll let people listen to this, and then I'll go back and I'll find that episode and I'll put it up, and people can compare the two and see how much shit I was talking back then, and, as opposed to now. And then in another 10 years, we'll do it again, and then we can see how much shit you're talking now. Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, Watchmen, the movie, reminded me a lot of the movie L.A. Confidential.
Okay.
Okay. Now, have you ever read the book L.A. Confidential?
I've never read the book, but I love the movie.
Okay. Now, those of you who are out there who have read the book and seen the movie, right now, I know you're nodding your heads because you know where I'm going to go with this. L.A. Confidential, the book and the movie, they cut an extraordinary amount of that book. Mm-hmm. There's a whole ton of subplots that never made it to the movie. However, you talk to somebody who's read the book and seen the movie, the weird thing is, when you watch the movie, it doesn't feel like that at all.
Okay.
You look at it and you say, okay, I know shit was cut out of here. A lot of stuff was cut out, but it doesn't feel like it. I got the same feeling when I watched Watchmen for the first time. I knew there was a lot that had been cut out, but it didn't feel like it.
Okay.
It did feel like a whole complete story was there. Not the story as presented in the graphic novel, which, of course, you got to go get the graphic novel because, like you said, there's all that other material that goes along with it. But I didn't feel like in other movies I've seen that have been adapted. I said, okay, I can, they chopped that out and they cut that out, and they really should have left that in. I didn't get that feeling with this. I knew that there was stuff that had been left out and changed and moved around, especially the ending, which really pissed off a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But I didn't feel cheated. I felt like, I got a complete story.
Okay.
Even though I had read the source material and I knew everything, I said, okay, you know what? I'm cool with this. I think that this is probably the best version of Watchmen that we could imagine that we was going to. Matter of fact, it was a lot better than most people thought we were going to get, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a lot better than I think. I was a lot better than I expected. But there's still that feeling of hollowness to me. And I kind of figured out why this last time. And I think what it is both Alan Moore and Zack Snyder are coming at this from two very different ideas. And because Alan Moore, one of the reasons he wanted to use the Charlton characters is because Steve Ditko created or co-created a lot of them. And for anyone who doesn't know, Steve Ditko was, because I think he passed away recently, he was an avowed objectivist, a big follower in Ayn Rand's philosophy, which also fuels like a lot of libertarianism and all that, and that's detailed in books like Atlas Shrugged and The Foundation and all that kind of stuff. Now, Alan Moore is a very left-wing anarchist who practices magic. So he's very much he's pretty much as opposite of an objectivist as you can possibly get. And one of the things that he was trying to do with the book, with Watchmen, was he was criticizing objectivism, and he was doing it through the characters. And that's one of the things is that a lot of people take the wrong message from this, including comic creators who followed who came into the industry after Watchmen, whereas they looked at Rorschach and they saw a badass action hero who they should base their characters on. But really, but when you read the book and you read it closely, you realize that Rorschach, the book is not praising Rorschach. The book is saying Rorschach's a psychopath. And
anybody, and I had plenty of people that were saying, "Oh man, he's cool. He's the best character in the movie." If you thought he was the best character in the movie, then you need to go check yourself.
It kind of reminds me of Sting told this story about how the famous song Watching You, or
Every Breath You Take.
Yeah, Every Breath You Take. That was it. And he tells this story where this couple came up to him and they said, "Oh, we loved your work. We love that song. It was the first song we danced to at our wedding." And Sting said that in his mind he was thinking that song's about a crazy stalker. He's like, I'm kind of concerned that you're using that as your wedding song.
Which only goes to show you how in this country we don't pay attention to shit, because nobody ever sat down and actually listened to the lyrics of that song.
Yeah.
You're gonna sit and tell me that, okay, what's the other song? See, this is why I get so wound up. Everybody was going on and on and on about that Christmas song. Oh, that's a date rape song. That's a date rape song.
Oh, Baby It's Cold Outside.
Yeah, Baby It's Cold Outside. Oh, that's a date rape song, but you're playing With Every Breath You Take at your wedding.
Mm-hmm.
This is a song that the man who wrote it is telling you, yes, it's about a creepy stalker. But, but to you, we love that song. Seriously? Okay. Okay, rant over. Back to Watchmen.
So that was the wrong message a lot of people took from it, was they thought that, and when you look back at the book, like, Rorschach's a pretty shitty detective when you think about it, because a lot of people, they think, oh, he stumbled on this whole conspiracy, and it's like, well, no, he was kind of bad at his job, because he goes in, he finds out Eddie Blake is the comedian, and then he immediately jumps to someone is killing costumed heroes when there is no evidence for that whatsoever. And then what does he do? He goes to a bar and he starts breaking fingers, but that has nothing to do with Eddie Blake's murder. And so it just shows that he's just a paranoid psychotic. And
yeah, he's paranoid. That's all it is. Yeah. Oh, well, somebody's trying to kill. He's trying to give himself some kind of purpose to justify the violence he's going to commit that he wants to do. So if there's this conspiracy to kill superheroes, stuff like that, oh, okay, well, now I can go out there and I'm justified in breaking necks and, killing people and throwing them off of rooftops because I'm trying to prevent this massive conspiracy that's going to kill me and my friends.
I think it also has something to do with his mental state, because you see, what is the first thing he does is he goes back and he looks up all his old contacts who were heroes like himself. And so it's kind of like he's using this as an excuse for social interaction as well, on a subconscious level.
Well, yeah, there's a scene, and it's kind of poignant, where he goes and he confronts, what's his name? Dan Dreiberg, the Night Owl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have a conversation down in his secret lair down there. And Rorschach kind of admits that he kind of misses the days when they were partners.
Right.
And they were going around, they were crime busting and beating up the gangs and stuff like that. And it's the closest that he comes to expressing, real feelings.
Well, I think the closest, I think he goes further at the end, because after they break him out of prison, Dan dresses him down and he says, like, this is why nobody likes you. And then Rorschach apologizes for probably the first time in his life.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, he actually says to him, I know it's not easy being my friend.
Yeah.
I know that, and that's one of the things I do like about the movie, is that if there's any two people that, as crazy as it sounds, if there's any two people that are real friends in this movie, it's those two. Mm-hmm. These completely opposite men who have nothing in common except the fact that they like to put on costumes and go beat up on people, but in a weird way, they have the closest relationship of anybody in the movie, really.
Right. Now, what I think the movie does is I think it also takes the wrong lesson about Rorschach, because it portrays Rorschach as a heroic character in this movie. And it gives weight to his conspiracy theories and his paranoia. And one example is, so in the book, when Rorschach is writing about Ozymandias in his journal, Adrian Veidt, he writes in his journal that Adrian is a possible homosexual, right?
Yeah.
And there is nothing to support that in the book whatsoever.
Not a thing. Yeah.
So it's just a way of saying, like, look, this guy's a crazy, right-wing lunatic. That's all he is. And he thinks Adrian Veidt is gay because Adrian is cosmopolitan, and that's really the only reason.
Yeah, that's all.
But the movie justifies his paranoia, because Adrian Veidt, like Ozymandias in the movie, his costume was purposely modeled on the Joel Schumacher Batman costumes, which got a lot of criticism for homoeroticism, and And also, he's standing outside Club 54 in that opening montage.
Yeah.
Matthew
and the village
Good is
people are behind. And the
Right.
village people are behind him. He goes over there and he's shaking him.
Matthew Good is, he's a very effeminate actor. He plays it very effeminately. He's very aloof. But if you go back to the comic, especially the interview Adrian did in one of the back matters, is Adrian is very charismatic. He's got a very warm personality. He's able to interact with people very well. And also, he's not a lean guy. He's a big guy. He's a built guy. They show that scene of him, which they cut out of the movie, I noticed as well, when Dan and Laurie are first trying to have sex on the couch. And on TV is Adrian going through this display of his physical prowess. And
Right.
He's much more of a Robert Redford type, or a Brad Pitt type, to put it in more recent terms.
Yeah.
Also, when they go to Adrian's office and Dan's looking on the computer, there's one of the folders on his computer that's labeled boys. So basically, I think this kind of goes to something that Snyder has an issue with, which I think he kind of has an issue with gay people in general, because you also saw this in 300, where he portrays Xerxes in this very kind of like homoerotic type fashion, and he has Leonidas have that line about the people from Athens being the boy lovers from Athens, which is really bizarre because the Spartans were gay as hell. So I think that the only reason that Snyder puts all this stuff in the movie is because this one throwaway paranoid line from Rorschach about how Adrian's a possible homosexual. Which
touches on something that I wanted to bring up when you were talking about a director and their particular worldview and why, and certain. Okay, because when you talk about Snyder and him interjecting his particular worldview into this material, it reminds me of when Josh Trank came out with his version of the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. And I had said in my review, and a lot of people, I caught heat for that, because I said, no, I don't blame Josh Trank for the Fantastic Four. And people say, what are you talking about? How can you not blame? He made a movie. Yeah, but based on the previous movies that he made, who in their right mind thought that he was the right director for Fantastic Four?
Right.
Now, Zack Snyder, I don't know the particulars about how this material came to him. I do know that a number of other directors turned it down, including Terry Gilliam, who said flat out that it was unfilmable. He said, you can't do this.
Yeah, Gilliam had tried for years to make this work, and he couldn't make it work as a movie, and he said it would have to be a miniseries.
Right. Okay. I knew it was somebody that said, yeah, you got to do this as like a 12-hour miniseries or something. It's not going to work as a movie. Mm-hmm. And I figured probably that it was just given to Snyder because he had already done 300.
Well, Snyder had actively campaigned for this. He included it was a still or something in, I think, one of the 300 trailers of someone dressed up as Rorschach holding the comedian's button, and he included this as like this one thing. That his wife even bet him $100 that nobody would find it, and it was discovered, and then that started the ball rolling on him being able to direct the movie. So he had wanted to make this movie.
Okay.
But the problem is that, like a lot of the people who followed the comic creator, who followed Watchmen the comic, is that, just like Mark Millar, just like a lot of the Image founders, is that I think Snyder took the wrong message from the movie. Because Snyder, also, this is ironic, because Snyder himself is an objectivist. And he's talked about his admiration for the Fountainhead and how he wants to direct a new version, a new adaptation of that book. And when you look at his movies, especially Batman v Superman and Watchmen, you can really see like his philosophy taking center stage in those movies.
Well, that's okay. Well, that goes back to my point about why it's important to put a director with the right material, or okay, if you're going to let him have his way with whatever property or whatever. Okay, certain directors you can hire. What's this guy I'm thinking of? Okay, Ratner. Okay, Brett Ratner. Brett Ratner is the guy that you don't hire for his vision.
Right.
Ron Howard is a guy you don't hire for his vision.
Right.
You hire them because you want them to deliver a product on time, on budget, with no problems.
There's also those creators who are very good at putting their own world beliefs aside. And I think Matthew Vaughn comes to mind because Matthew Vaughn is a very right-wing guy in real life. Mark Millar has said that, I love Matthew Vaughn, but one of the problems is, trying to get past his love of the Tories and the right-wing British politics.
Right.
But if you watch his movies, you don't really get that sense. And like people have said, if Matthew Vaughn wants to direct a Superman movie, he should.
Right. Okay, you got ahead of me, but basically that's where I was going. And then you have the directors like Zack Snyder who cannot let go of their own, sexual, political, psychological, philosophical hang-ups when they're directing something. Right. Because that's in everything he does. That was in Sucker Punch.
Oh my God, Sucker Punch is like a 2-hour-long Zack Snyder therapy session.
Yeah, bingo. There you go. I mean, it's not just the visual style that's in his movies. It's what he thinks about life, period. Right. In all of his movies. And does that work to his advantage? No, it doesn't work to his advantage. Like you said, in stuff like Superman, because he doesn't get Superman at all.
No. And I think that goes back to his philosophy because, one of the key tenets of objectivism is selfishness is a virtue, and there's no such thing as a selfless man. And Superman is the ultimate selfless man.
When he had that scene in Man of Steel where Pa Kent told him that he had to hide his powers from the world and don't do, I said, okay, bingo, he don't get Superman at all. Right. Because that's not Superman. He don't get Pa Kent. He doesn't get the whole concept. What you do is that you're supposed to give him characters that fits his concept and his worldview. Because whatever characters he takes, he's going to take it and he's going to fit that the way that he thinks of the world, because he can't be objective enough. Like you said, you have directors who are objective and can say, okay, well, I could just make a movie about this character and not put my DNA in here. But no, Snyder is definitely not that kind of director. He can't do that.
And with a story like Watchmen, because Watchmen is so influenced, despite what, right-wing trolls on Twitter think, Watchmen is so influenced by politics, and particularly left-wing politics. I mean, the whole thing it's all about the Cold War. It's all about these right-wing paranoia. It's all about criticizing and taking down the system. And
you know who would have been the perfect director for this movie?
Well, after
John Frankenheimer.
Okay, yeah, John
Frankenheimer, because basically, Watchmen is a Cold War right-wing paranoid thriller. Yeah. Disguised as a superhero movie. But that's mainly what it's about. And you touched on something that really drives me crazy when the TV series came out, they said, oh, why did they have to put politics in it? I said, wait a minute. Did you read the original graphic novel? Did you see the movie?
Well, remember that meme I posted on Facebook where it's like, I love comics, but I wish they weren't so political, and my favorite comics are Watchmen and the X-Men?
Yeah. I mean, seriously, practically Watchmen is all about politics. That is what it's about. It is about politics.
It is. And something that I think that Snyder is missing the point here is that, and a lot of people miss the point about Watchmen, is that the whole point of Watchmen is that Moore was taking down superheroes. He was completely tearing down the idea of superheroes. Because when you think about it, the idea behind superheroes is this guy thinks that he's the one who has the authority to be judge, jury, and executioner for the rest of us. And that's a very objectivist type of view. This idea of like the selfish man who's deciding for himself what is right and wrong. But when you think about it in that context and you look back at Watchmen, you're left thinking, why the hell would we want these people to speak for us, to defend us? Because they're unhinged. Because you've got Rorschach, who, as we've already covered, is a psychotic right-wing lunatic, who cooks up conspiracy theories in his mind to justify breaking people's fingers. You've got Dr. Manhattan, who's the victim of this science experiment, and now he's a walking H-bomb, but he is so cold and so distant that he has no connection to humanity whatsoever.
He makes Mr. Spock look warm and cuddly.
Yeah. And I mean, there's that scene where when Rorschach tells him about the comedian's death, and he says, well, there's no difference between a live body and a dead body. They've got the same number of molecules.
Yeah.
So he's just so disconnected from everything. And it makes sense. Why? Because, someone who's as powerful as him, like, we must look to him like ants look to us. So it's understandable why you'd have that perspective, but you wouldn't want someone like that to necessarily be the defender of all humanity. And then you've got Laurie, the second Silk Spectre, who was forced into this by her mother, who's never really wanted to do it, who's got a whole host of psychological issues. And then you've got Dan Dreberg, who's this guy, son of privilege, who basically he doesn't take responsibility in his life. He's a big kid. Like, he just likes the idea of dressing up as his favorite superhero and playing with all these toys. And then you've got Adrian Veidt, who, he built himself, he gave away his fortune, he built himself up from nothing, but his idol is Alexander the Great, one of the fiercest conquerors in world history. Like, that guy, no doubt, had tons of blood on his hand, and you want to model yourself after that guy. So, and he fits into that role perfectly, because then he says, I'm going to be the one to decide to kill millions of people in order to save the world, because I say that's the only way to do it. And the whole idea behind all of this is you're saying, look at these guys. They're broken. They're psychologically damaged, and these are the people that we look to defend us. And then, of course, there's, comedian who is a complete nihilist, who thinks human life itself is a complete joke.
Who is probably, as far as I'm concerned, as much as I dislike him, the comedian is probably the most honest character in the whole thing.
Oh, he is.
Here's what Watchmen did. And you summed up the characters in this thing perfectly. My hat's off to you. You did it much better than I could have. But here's what it did. Previous to Watchmen, we had 60 years of comic books, right? Mm-hmm. 60 years of various comic book companies telling us that, oh my God, if we just had superheroes in the real world, all our lives would be so much better. Mm-hmm. And then along comes Watchmen, and Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons is telling us, well, no, the world would not necessarily be the utopia that you think is going to be if we had people in costumes running around taking the law into their own hand. Right. As a matter of fact, most of these characters end up working for the government. Yeah. Yeah. Like the comedian, he turns into the hitman. He's shaking hands with the president and given what we know about him, yeah, he's a hitman for the government. Dr. Manhattan goes to work for the government. Silk Spectre, she becomes a government whore, pretty much. She's a sex slave to, Dr. Manhattan. That's her only purpose. Yeah. So, yeah, and her mother, they could do a whole movie about her alone because, the comedian, he attempts to rape her, and then apparently later on she forgives the rape and has a child by him. Yeah. Now, what kind of psychological hoo-ha is going on there?
And it goes back to the original heroes, the Minutemen, because you see that they've got these same types of hang-ups and issues. Like, there's Dollar Bill, who's just a corporate-sponsored superhero. and he ends up getting killed because his cape gets stuck in a door, which the PR people at the company thought would be a good idea to give him this cape.
To give him a cape, yeah.
You've got the comedian who we've already talked about. You've got Silk Spectre, the original one, who's only doing this as a stepping stone to get into acting and modeling. Like, she doesn't really care about being a superhero. And, Mason talks about it in his book, how, they're all coming in this with their all, like, kind of sexual hang-ups and stuff like that. And it's all just like a game to them. Yeah,
because Mason, and he's a very interesting character in that he was a cop.
Yeah.
And he got into this pretty much as a way to extend his role as a policeman.
Right.
And not just be an out and out, vigilante, but he realized that there were certain things that he could do to aid the police if he stepped outside the law, which, okay, are we talking about questionable morals here and everything like that? Of course we are. Anytime that you put on a costume and hide your identity and step outside the law, yeah, we're stepping into a definite dark gray area here. But out of all the characters in Watchmen, we can say that his motives were the most pure.
Yeah.
And that he was not corrupted by putting on this mask, and eventually he died for it.
Right.
Because he wasn't corrupted. And I get the feeling, I haven't read the Watchmen. Matter of fact, I was looking for it. I thought it was here someplace. I couldn't find it. But I get the impression that, when he was doing his time with the Minutemen, and after the incident where the comedian tried to rape Silk Spectre, that's probably when he got out of the game.
Right.
I get that impression that, he said, you know what? Yeah, this isn't going the way that I thought it was going to go,
Now, in the movie, I think right from the opening, it kind of tells you how Snyder is viewing this very differently, because in the book, we never see how Blake dies. Like, we never see the scene when he gets attacked and thrown out the window. We see the detectives' impressions of it and what they believe happened as they're reconstructing the crime scene, but we never actually see it on page in the comic book. But in this book, in this movie, they show it to us on screen. Like, they show him being attacked and they show the fight, and right from the start, they show you what it's going to be, because Snyder's camera really has like almost a pornographic view of violence, and it really it puts so much emphasis on the violence in the movie. Like, you see this close-up of Blake punching his hand through the wall.
Through the wall, yeah. When
Laurie and Dan are attacked, they're smashing bricks with their bare hands, and the camera is going it's taking its time to film like blood flying and all this stuff. And also in the scene when Dr. Manhattan goes to Vietnam, yes, it's a recreation of that scene, or also the scene when Night Owl and Comedian are putting down the riot, and it's a recreation of the panels, except the way that Snyder reenacts them is, he's got the framing there, but it's got a completely different view of the situation, especially when you factor in the music that's playing in the background. Like in the Vietnam scene, you've got the Flight of the Valkyries playing. Right. I can't remember what song was playing in the riot scene, but it was like, you remember,
I'm your boogie man.
What was that?
Casey and the Sunshine Band. I'm your boogie man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was blanking on what song that was. But yeah, so they're playing. Man. I'm playing "I'm Your Boogie Man," and
that's what I am.
and in the scene when Dan and Rorschach are going to confront Vate, they're playing Jimi Hendrix's cover of All Along the Watchtower. And the music is great in this movie. I love all this music, but the problem is, when you think about what the comic was trying to say, the music really puts, and the way that Snyder films it is he's twisting the perspective completely. So now it becomes more about, like, you're watching these scenes of violence and you're getting pumped up and you're like, yeah, this is so awesome. Look at how he punches through that brick. But in the comic, the whole thing is like, no, this is not awesome. This is terrible. This is terrifying. And the fact that, Dan and Laurie, these two people, that the only way they can find some sort of connection to others is through doing violence or dressing up in these superhero costumes. And it's like it's kind of the way they're trying to say it in the comic is these are tragic, broken people. You should not want to be like them. But the movie, it says, yeah, look at how awesome and how badass everybody is.
Yeah. And I mean, they kind of like make the point that Dan is impotent because him and Laurie don't have sex until after they put on, until after they put on the costume.
Right.
And then they go out and that's when they save the people from the burning building. And like you said, they have that scene where they're being mugged and they beat up on people. And that's also another excellent point that you make, that going back to what I said earlier, that these aren't exactly superheroes. They're more like costume acrobats and martial artists. Right. But from some of the things that the comedian does, like you said, he punches through a concrete wall, and by all rights, he should have shattered every bone in his hand, but he doesn't. And then in the fight scene where Laurie and Dan are being mugged, they come off as a little bit more like enhanced humans, right? Rather than, martial artists. Because they're like they're like breaking bones with like no effort at all, you know, and they're back flipping and doing all this kind of stuff.
And also, Dan has this smile on his face just before they're about to get attacked, which is not in the comic. And that's also kind of something, too. It shows like kind of like this misunderstanding of the characters, is that Dan is not happy that the only way he can find, some semblance of connection to others is through violence and, big superhero masks.
Yeah, because okay, when you go back to the movie, it's like Dan is really getting back into this and he's enjoying it. And he's saying, oh man, I really missed this and everything like that. And yeah, that's not what the graphic novel was all about.
No, in the graphic novel, he's basically having a midlife crisis.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's out of shape. Mm-hmm. He's let himself go. He doesn't want to get back into this because he knows that he's let himself go and he knows that this is not a healthy way for a man his age to live.
There's also the scene when we first see Adrian, like when he first appears in the main story, not the opening credits. But there is that scene when in the movie, Dan goes to tell him about Rorschach's theory. And you see him, he's doing this interview, and in the background, you see Dan, he's taking like the Night Owl figure, and he's like excited about it, and he's playing with it. But in the comic, that's not Dan at all who goes to see him, it's Rorschach. And Rorschach criticizes the fact that Ozymandias is, merchandising his legacy.
Right.
So again, that's again this kind of view where you get the sense that Dan really likes this life in the movie and he wants to do it, whereas in the comics you don't get the sense that Dan likes it. You feel like he just doesn't know what else to do with his life.
Yeah, he doesn't know right, exactly. At this point he doesn't know what else to do, but in the movie, he definitely embraces getting back into the costume and doing the whole superhero thing. He's into it. Right. There's no doubt about that. Same thing with Laurie. She gets back into it, and it's like, she really wants to get back into this. Whereas in the graphic novel, it is clearly spelled out that she never wanted this. It was her mother that pushed her into it. Her mother keeps saying, "Oh, well, don't you want to be famous? Don't you want everybody to know your name? Don't you want men to be, foreign?" She says, "No, I don't want that." She said, "That was your thing. I never want none of that shit."
They don't call her by her real name, and that's another little point to Laurie's character is, in the book, her mother took the last name Jupiter because she didn't want people to know that she was Polish.
Yeah, she was Polish.
But in the comic, and in the comic, when Rorschach first encounters them in the story, he calls her Ms. Jupiter, and she scolds him, and she's like, "My last name is Juspeckwitz," or I know there's a lot of debate about how it's pronounced, but that's just what I'm going with off the top of my head. And, she explains that, my mother used the name Jupiter because she didn't want people to know that she was Polish. So that's another thing, is that Laurie is done hiding behind masks in the comic.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Where the movie, they never mention that, and I think that kind of takes away from it. And it's tough because, even in the comic, Laurie is not the most well-developed character. I think she gets the shaft of development out of all the characters in the comic. But in the movie, she's treated even worse, I think.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like in the movie, she comes off as, just like constantly whining and complaining. And in the comic, you understand why. Like, you understand why she's broken like this and why she's got this, cynical view of everything. But in the movie, you never really get that sense of why. So she just comes off really bad, I think, in the movie.
Well, you know what? Okay. I think that I don't see it that way because having, of course, and see, this is what happens when you read the source material and then you watch a movie or TV show that's based on it. Mm-hmm. Since you have that advantage, you're filling in the gaps.
Right.
So I guess that's why I don't see it that way. Me personally, as far as all of the characters are concerned, I think that they did a pretty good job of representing them. Except, like you say, there is that slant with the characters of the comedian and of Rorschach that, kind of puts them in a more, how shall I say this, not heroic, in a more sympathetic light.
Yeah.
Whereas we're supposed to feel like, I guess, like, okay, that scene in Vietnam where they've just won the war and he's getting drunk in the bar and he's talking to Dr. Manhattan and everything like that. And I guess we're supposed to feel sorry for him because, he was dragged into doing all of these things. And
right.
And then the Vietnamese girl, she comes in because she's pregnant with his baby. And because she just asked him to do the right thing, he kills her.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to make a sympathetic character out of a guy like that.
Right. But the movie goes out of its way to do it. And that's the weird thing about it. And in fact, I noticed this when I was, after rewatching the movie, after rereading the book, is that a lot of the character defining stuff about John, about Laurie, about Dan, about Adrian, it gets excised. It's not talked about in the comic, in the movie, I mean. But Rorschach and comedian, their stories are almost portrayed completely unedited.
Yeah.
The one exception is, and one of the most interesting cuts comes when Rorschach is in prison and he's interviewed by the psychiatrist. Now, in the book, there's almost like a whole chapter devoted just to this psychiatrist. And you find out, you see like how Rorschach's worldview is infecting his life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The focus is on the psychiatrist and how Rorschach's madness is kind of preys on his psyche.
Right. And, this guy who's, he's a good guy, maybe a bit opportunistic, but in general, he's a decent guy. And his whole life basically falls apart because Rorschach is almost like a disease that infects him.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that is complete. Which is the
point that Alan Moore was trying to make.
Right.
That this kind of worldview, this kind of, idea of how life is that Rorschach has, that's like a disease that can infect you.
Right. It's completely toxic. And
that's
gone from the movie. The movie, like, because they that psychiatrist, he just appears in that one scene. He goes in to interview him, and right away Rorschach tells his story, and the psychiatrist leaves, and he says, I can't help him.
Well, the whole point of that scene, as you say, that's supposed to make us feel sorry for Rorschach because, that's when the poor guy went crazy.
Yeah.
When he was investigating this kidnapping and he found out that the guy fed the little girl to the dogs.
Right.
Presumably that made him snap. No, that did not make him snap. The man had snapped long before that.
Right. That was just the final nail in his coffin.
Yeah, exactly. That was just that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, But he was cracked long before that.
And I think by showing us it this way, by taking away the psychiatrist's story, you're removing half the story from it, and you don't understand what the real point of telling us his origin was. Like, we can understand he's been through some shit, and it probably explains a little bit about why he is the way he is, but without you seeing the effect that it has on other people, you don't really get the full story, and it undermines the point that Moore was trying to make.
Because here's the whole thing behind that character. Okay. there is little scant difference there is only a hair's thickness between him deciding to put on that mask and that hat and that trench coat and going out to beat up what he considers to be the dregs of society. Mm-hmm. When he could just have easily have gotten a gun and went up on a bell tower someplace and start shooting people that he thinks are the dregs of society. There's really not that much difference.
Well, I mean, there's his whole opening line. I mean, that tells you everything about it. Where, he says when, like, all the whores and the politicians will look up and they'll scream, "Save me," and I'll whisper, "No." And it's like, well, that's like the most unheroic thing you could ever do.
Which is the whole thing about superheroes. Okay, why do we love superheroes? Because they beat up the quote-unquote wrong people or the right people. Right. As long as they're beating up, the criminals and everything like that, okay, well, we're cool with them. But then once they start deciding who's a criminal, who's not a criminal, that's the whole point.
It's that whole, it's that Harvey Dent line from The Dark Knight. You die a hero, you live long enough to be a villain.
Yeah, because sooner or later, that's what happens. You start making that distinction in your mind. Okay, well, you know something? Well, you know what? I could beat up that guy because I just don't like him. I don't like the way he looks. Because sooner or later, it gets to that point. Yeah. It gets to that point where you start taking the law into your own hands. And why not?
And it happens in the book, too. I mean, that idea gets extended to the ultimate execution of it when, Veidt decides, I'm just going to kill millions of people because I think that's the only way that we can have peace on Earth.
Bingo.
And what happens when the other quote-unquote heroes find out is they decide to keep quiet, right? They make that decision.
Yeah. They actually go along and say, well, we can't tell. Right. Now we know this, we know it's wrong. And they got to go along with this for no reason. I think that what we keep coming back to, and that is the theme of both the movie and the graphic novel, is that superheroes are not necessarily a good thing.
Well, I think that is definitely the theme in the comic. I think the movie kind of muddles that because the movie is torn between what the source material is trying to say and Zack Snyder trying to recreate panels. And you know what it reminds me of? Do you remember that episode of The Simpsons when Alan Moore appeared on the show voicing himself?
Vaguely.
Okay, so it was like Alan Moore, it was Art Spiegelman, and Dan Close, I think, the guy who created Ghost World. And they appeared at a comic book convention, and all three creators voiced themselves. And Bart goes up to Alan Moore, and he says... He's like, "Oh, Alan Moore, you wrote my favorite issues of Radioactive Man ever." He's like, "I love what you did." And Alan Moore says, "You mean you like that I turned your childhood hero into a heroin-addicted jazz critic who isn't actually radioactive?" And then Bart says, "Oh no, I don't read the words. I just look at the pictures." He's like, "How do you get their costumes to stick so close to their muscles?" And I watched that and I realized Zack Snyder is Bart Simpson in that episode.
Zack Snyder, Bart. I just got an image in my mind. That's great. I love that. Yeah. Okay. You're right though. Yeah.
Because he does. He's so obsessed with just recreating the panels that he doesn't put as much thought into what those panels mean.
And he does, and know something? To give him his due, he does that superbly well in this.
Oh, he does. I will say this. Like, the movie looks amazing. All of Snyder's movies look amazing.
Visually, that guy takes a backseat to nobody.
Yeah, he's very stylish. He's got a great sense of design. And, all the costs in all the superhero movies he's done, they look absolutely amazing. A little bit too dark in places, but overall they look really good. I've got nothing but praise for the way he designed Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman's costumes. They're perfect. The Flash, that's a different story, but
Oh God, yeah, okay. Well, we'll say that for when we get to Justice League.
Yeah. But But overall, like, his design sense is amazing. And, you know, we've talked before about that scene in Batman v Superman when Batman goes to the warehouse. And, you know, how he does a great job of showcasing that action. Like, he knows action. He knows how to film something in a way that it looks good. And
the best live action Batman fight scene ever.
Absolutely. Yeah, hands down. No argument from me at all. But the problem is that you keep giving him these characters that he doesn't understand. And
he knows the words, but he doesn't listen to the music.
Exactly. Like the Sting song.
Yeah.
And that's and like, if you give him something, give him Moon Knight, give him the Punisher.
Yeah.
Or, hell, give him the Question, because the Question was an objectivist character to begin with. But you give him something like that, let him cut loose, I think you'd have an amazing movie. But you should stop giving him stuff that he's clearly not suited for, because
that doesn't fit his worldview. Right. Just like I said, Josh Trank, going back to the Fantastic Four movie. You know, Fantastic Four are characters that don't suit his worldview at all.
Right.
You got to... Yeah, if you gave Zack Snyder a character, like you said, Moon Knight would be perfect for him. The Punisher.
Mm-hmm.
Give him a Punisher movie he made would be absolutely amazing. You give him a character like that. The Question. I would push an old lady in a wheelchair down a flight of stairs if I could see a Question movie. Exactly. Yeah. Give him a character that matches his worldview, and he would knock it out of the park.
Absolutely.
But when you give him characters that don't fit his world, like Superman, and then he tries to transmogrify the character to fit what he thinks Superman should be, well, that don't work. You know, that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
That's like giving what's that guy's name? That's like giving E.T. to Eli Roth and saying, okay, well, I want you to remake this.
You know what? Now I kind of want to see that.
Yeah. That's insane. That's insane.
Or like giving Superman to Tim Burton, which I also kind of want to see after seeing the documentary about it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know how badly I wanted to see Nicolas Cage as Superman until I said, something, I do kind of want to see that movie now. But though,
sorry, go ahead.
All in all, I think that the controversy about the movie stems not only from Zack Snyder's worldview of it, but also that, the best way that I could illustrate how I think people took Watchmen is when I went to see it.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to see it, me and my wife, I said, okay, come on. Well, we're going to see the superhero movie. She said, fine, okay. She brought her blanket because she was going to go to sleep anyway. So we go to the movies and we go in there, and it's the middle of the day, mind you, because we always go to matinees.
Right.
Matinee is about like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's about 20 people in there, all adults, except for this one guy with these two little boys. And the two little boys had to be about like 9 and 10.
Mm-hmm. So
the guy that's selling them the tickets are telling them, this is already a movie, man, right? Y'all, mind your business. So he takes the kids in there. We sit down and we're watching the movie. The guy doesn't say anything until he gets to the scene where Dan and Laurie are having sex in the owl ship.
Mm-hmm.
Then this guy, this responsible parent, jumps up, grabs his kid and says, I want to see the manager. How can you have this? This is a superhero movie. How can you make a movie like this and let kids aren't supposed to be seeing this? Wait a minute.
They told you that, buddy.
Wait a minute. You done watched the man being beaten to death and thrown through a plate glass window. Mm-hmm. You've watched a naked blue giant incinerate half a dozen people. You've watched a man kill a pregnant woman.
Cock hanging out on screen.
Yeah, you've watched all of this, and this did not bother you. But two people having sex in now you're upset.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that encapsulated the whole thing about Watchmen, that people didn't understand what it was about. Mm-hmm. That this was not a movie for kids.
Yeah.
And I get a feeling that was a lot of the problem that people had when it came out in the movie theater, because still people were associating superheroes with kiddie stuff. And I think they went in expecting one type of movie, and got a completely different type of movie? Because a lot of people I know that went to see that weren't comic book were completely baffled by the movie. They said, I don't get it. I didn't understand. Because when you say superheroes, they expect superheroes. They expect Superman flying around, or Spider-Man, or, whatever. People honestly didn't know what to make of this.
Well, I think part of the problem is that this is why that if you're going to do Watchmen, it has to be done as like a TV series, because there is so much that's crammed into that comic book that you can't really tell a linear narrative story without leaving whole chunks of it out, because the story is just not built that way.
Yeah. There's... Okay, in an ideal world, because I remember when I went to see Dune during its original theatrical run. Now, a lot of you don't remember this because you're not young enough to remember this, but bear with me. When you went to see Dune, when it was in this original theatrical release.
Oh, Dune. I thought you said Doom, like the...
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's my nasal way of speaking. Dune.
Okay.
The adaptation, right? Okay, this was the movie that David Lynch did, adapted from the novel,
Frank Herbert novel.
Frank Herbert novel, right? You got a little booklet that explained like that explained like a whole lot of the terminology. It gave you like a little background on a little, things that couldn't be explained fully in the movie.
Right.
In a perfect world, when you went to see Watchmen during its original theatrical run, they should have given you something like that. Right. Some kind of supplemental material so that you could have took, so that, maybe before the movie starts, you just go through it. You think maybe that might have helped?
I don't know if it would or not, because people wouldn't have read it, is what I think. I mean, because, how many people do you think read that Dune booklet anyway?
A lot of people did.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, we're talking about a time when, things were done like a little bit differently, back.
But I think in this day of age, people wouldn't have read it. I mean, even, going back to when I first read Watchmen, I skipped all the supplementary stuff.
Yeah, but you went back and read it, right?
I went back and read it, this last time. But up until then, I read Watchmen 3 or 4 times, and I'd always just skip the supplemental stuff.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's what I'm saying. I can see that it probably wouldn't have gotten read. That's why I think it could be presented a lot better if you did it as a TV series, because then you could go into depth with all the characters and how they came to be, because Watchmen's not really a story about a guy trying to blow up New York with a giant squid, or with a nuclear blast, or whatever it was, as they did in the movie, right? It's a story about these people and their broken lives. That's really what it's about.
Well, of course, I mean, everything is not exactly what it's supposed to be about. I mean, I get your point. I don't know. Okay, whenever people go to movies and then they tell me, they say, okay, well, they could have did this, they could have did that, they could have did that. Yeah, okay, there's a lot of things that they could have did, but we have to deal with what we have and not it could have been this, it could have been that. Mm-hmm. In the best possible world that we have right now, I think this was the best job that they did at that time. Although I do agree with you 100%, I think that the way that they're doing Watchmen now in its current form, they're doing the TV series. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that they should go back and do the original one in that format.
Well, in fact, that's what I was thinking, because when they first announced that they're going to do a Watchmen TV show and it's not going to be connected to the movie, my first thought was, they're finally going to do an actual adaptation, and HBO is the perfect place to do that. And then they announced, no, it's not going to be. It's not going to be the adaptation of the original comic. It's going to be a sequel to it. And I thought, my first thought was I was disappointed. Because I'm like, well, I'm not one of those people who thinks they should never touch Watchmen again. I had no problem with Before Watchmen. I had no problem with Doomsday Clock. I don't think that it's one of those things that should never have a sequel, because, I'm of the frame of mind that if the sequel sucks, you just ignore it. In my mind... In my mind, there are only 2 Rambo movies. There's the first one, and there's the one with him in Burma. I haven't seen the new one yet, so I can't say about that one.
Thank you. There you go. I mean, you would think that by now we have grown past that bullshit baby crying about sequels. Oh, I hate sequels. I hate sequels.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Live with it, because quite frankly, if a property has proven to have legs and is going to continue to make money and everything like that, they're going to make sequels ad infinitum. Look at the recent Terminator thing. You know, they're still making Terminator movies. They're going to keep making them. But like you said, as you so wildly said, just ignore it. There's nothing that says that you have to pay. Like me, I have my own individual cosmology in my own head as to what exists and what doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. You know, and there's certain things, because I'm like you. As far as I'm concerned, there's only, well, I have to count Rambo 3. Because, well, I did kind of come up with a story for that. Okay. Yeah, that's a story I'll tell at a, you never heard my Rambo story?
I don't think so.
I'll tell it at another time.
Okay.
Yeah. Just remind me, and somewhere down the road, I'll take some time and I'll explain my Rambo story, because it takes time. Okay. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. I was not opposed to, if they were going to do Watchmen again as a series, I was all for it, especially considering that I'm watching this series that they have on now, and the guy that's doing it, Daimon Lindelof, am I pronouncing his name right?
I believe so,
okay. Yeah, he gets it.
Right. And that was another thing that I was kind of worried about, because you remember Lost and how they were basically just, they spent years telling us, oh, we have a plan for everything. We have a plan for everything. And then they get to the end and they're like, yeah, we were just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they were making that shit up as they go along. Right. They didn't know what they were doing. They were making it up as they went along. So
I was worried about that. Like, okay, well, it's Lindelof, and he's proven that he has this kind of tendency to just kind of throw shit at the wall. And I thought if he was doing an adaptation of the original, at least then he'd have a roadmap where he's supposed to go, so maybe that could rein in that stuff. But him doing a sequel, I was a little bit worried about that. And I was also kind of disinterested in the idea of seeing a Watchmen sequel. So my whole thing was, I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, it looks okay. I'll wait until it's complete, and then I'll probably get around to watching it at some point, just like I still haven't gotten around to watching the last 3 or 4 seasons of Game of Thrones. But then it came out, and everybody's talking about it, and I kept getting curious. And then finally I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm going to have to give this a try. So after the 4th or 5th episode, I binge watched on all the episodes, and I'm like, holy shit, he really gets it. Yeah, he gets it. He knows the words and the music. Yeah. And part of me is thinking, like, I hope Alan Moore at some point, maybe without even telling anyone, watches this show, because I think he might be surprised at how much Lindelof gets. Yeah, because without a doubt, and what I like about this is that it does not violate anything that we have already seen in the graphic novel or the movie. No, and it gives some interesting twists, like the last episode where they talk about Will's past. Oh my God, Hooded Judge, yeah. All right, so there's spoilers, guys, just in case so you know that. But yeah, there's a huge revelation there. But yeah, that was that whole episode. Like, and that was the episode I thought I would be the least interested in, because I saw the preview and I thought, well, I'm more interested in the current story. I'm not as interested in seeing a whole episode devoted to Will. But after watching it, I'm like, holy crap, that was the best episode of the series. It was. And somebody on Twitter said, and I wish I could find their name, because I love giving credit where credit is due. They said more happens in 6 episodes of Watchmen than in 6 seasons of some other series. Yeah. And that is 100% true. There is always something happening in this thing. The story is moving ahead. The characters are moving ahead. And there are echoes of what we've seen in the movie. There, which is what I love. I love, little echoes and callbacks and stuff like that. What they've done with Laurie is absolutely phenomenal. Oh, I said this on the Facebook group, but this is the best version of Laurie that's ever been seen. Like, she's better than the comics version even. Yeah. And I don't know if the actress, I'm trying to remember her name. Jean Smart. Jean Smart, who, if you only knew her from Designing Women, you would never have guessed that she had
type of dramatic chops.
Oh my God, she's brilliant in the show. Like, and her and Regina King playing off each other, it's awesome.
It's like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
It is, yeah.
In Heat, yeah, it is. It's that good.
And then you've got Jeremy Irons. He's just so fun to watch in this show. Like, you know what? I'm gonna say it. Put Jeremy Irons in every single superhero adaptation from now on.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just have him do it. I mean, I loved him when he was in Batman versus what was it? Batman versus Superman?
Yeah,
was that it?
And Justice League.
Okay, and he was Alfred.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like the best Alfred ever.
I mean, he was the best part of both those movies, I think.
Yeah. I mean, he is having obviously so much fun in this show, doing whatever the hell it is he's doing. Mm-hmm. We still aren't quite sure yet what the deal is with him or what's going on or how he got there or what's happening. But it's just so much fun to watch him having fun.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah,
they could do this for the next 3-4 seasons, and I'd watch.
And, I would love to see them, if after this is over, if Lindelof decides, you know what, I am going to go back and adapt the original story, I would love to see that. I think it would be... I think it would be the perfect way to do it.
I think that if he took, like 8 episodes, mm-hmm. and so I think he could do it, and I think, we would probably have the definitive version of Watchmen.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we had it. Just based on what I've seen so far. In those 6 episodes that he did, I say, okay, he gets it. He knows what he's doing. There's a confidence to the storytelling that I like. I like when I can feel, wait a minute, how can I put it? Confidence, and there was something else. A surety. That's what I'm looking for. There's a surety. He knows where he's going with this. It's not like Lost, like you said, because then I said, after a while, I just sat back and said, okay, well, they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. They just, they don't know what they're doing. But here, they know what they're doing.
It is so confident. It has so much confidence. The balls on this show are massive. Like the way they handle race and politics and people who are saying like the comic wasn't about politics. Yes, it was, and they're taking. Yeah. You can't use Cold War themes in a TV show that's set in modern times and expect it to be a modern show. It doesn't work that way. Like, they have to take modern day equivalents, and so he's looking at things like police brutality and race relations and all this kind of stuff, and he's weaving it all together in a brilliant way.
And I'm going to say this just flat out, that he's a white guy, mm-hmm. and I give him 100%. My hat is off to him for having the first episode. The first scene of the first episode that we have is about the massacre, the Tulsa massacre. Yeah. I knew about. You knew about.
Well, actually, no. See, that's the thing. I did not know about it.
You did not know about that?
No, and you know me. Like, I'm a pretty... I like to keep my... I know a lot of, fucked up history that America has done. But this was something even I didn't know about.
Yeah, that's why I figured that you would know about it, because, you are what I consider to be an extremely social conscious person, and you know a lot about other cultures and other races. And like you said, you know a lot about the messed up stuff this country has done. But I was surprised that there was a lot of black people that I know that contacted me on Facebook and on the phone and whatever, and they were called. A lot of black people didn't know about this.
Yeah.
A lot of people did not know about this, and I give him, my hats is off to him, to bringing this horrible incident in American history and making that the focus of what is supposed to be a superhero show.
Well, and what's now happening is that HBO is backing a comic book about the Tulsa massacre.
Yeah. Because a lot of people did not know about that. I mean, it was something I heard about, but it's only come to light in recent. There was another incident that was like that. If you ever get the chance, it's a movie called Rosewood with Ving Rhames. Okay. And it's set in Florida, and it was just about the same thing happened to a town in Florida, but those were the two most extreme examples of what happened. But out in the West, like in those territories like Oklahoma and places like that, because you have to remember that after the Civil War, there was a whole bunch of black people that just went west, period.
Right.
And formed their own towns and own, their cities and communities and stuff like that. This happened in a number of places. Tulsa is, of course, the most horrendous one, but this is something that happened quite regularly. Where,
well, the thing we talked about on, Japan on Film when we did Seven Samurai and Magnificent Seven is that people have people's ideas of what the Old West was like after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, it's very different from the way that it really was. It wasn't as, lily white as everybody thinks it was. These towns were a lot more integrated. There were a lot of people of different races. You had a lot more like intermixing of the races, like Native American and black, black and Chinese, black and white, and there's a lot more stuff going on that people really realize.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. That's why even today, you will not meet a black person that will not claim that they don't have somebody Indian in their family. That's just like a black thing. Everybody, oh yeah, well, my great grandmother was a Cherokee or something like that. Right. But there was a lot of that was going on. And like I said, a lot of people don't know that. But yeah, there was a lot of black people that after the Civil War, well, they just packed up and they just went west. Right. And they formed their own communities in their own towns. And that was it. And that's
in these places, you didn't really have the benefit of picking and choosing the people that you'd need help from. Like you were out in the wilderness there, you were going to accept help from anyone you could find.
Exactly. But again, history is written by the winners. Right. And that's why a lot of American history got whitewashed, and a lot of it is only coming to light now. Yeah. And a lot of issues are being redressed as to how stories are being told. And I just give a lot of credit to, this guy for, he's presenting such a horrendous incident and framing it in the context of a modern superhero story. To me, it was a brilliant choice to make. It was a brilliant way to go. Gutsy,
well, and like they did in this episode, they connected to Superman's story.
Yeah.
I thought that was an amazing way to do that and to draw that connection. And that gives him the inspiration to become a hero. Yeah.
Yeah. Bringing it right back to the first superheroes, Superman, right? Like we did in our first episode. What do we do our first episode on? Superman, because ultimately it all starts with him.
Yeah, and
that's why that's why they did that. That's why they had that scene in there, because ultimately everything goes back to Superman.
Plus, they also bring in a character that you're very familiar with, and that's Bass Reeves.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, but I think this may be the first time he's really appeared in any sort of like really mainstream media production. Am I wrong about that?
I have been told that there are a couple of Bass Reeves movies that were floating out there somewhere. I haven't seen any of them. Somebody told me there was a Bass Reeves movie.
Okay, but if there is, I know they're coming out with one now. I just saw the trailer for it this morning. Right. With Ron Perlman.
They're coming out with one now, but I don't know. I'm kind of leery about that one because it looks to me like, what's his name is more the main character?
Ron Perlman.
Who?
Ron Perlman, you mean?
Yeah, Ron Perlman. From what I've seen of it, it looks to me like he's more like the main character in this.
Okay.
And Bass Reeves is like a supporting character. I don't know. I'm not making any. Don't get mad at me, folks. I don't know all that much about, the movie. I mean, listen, more than anybody else, I would love to see a Bass Reeves movie. And again, Bass Reeves was a character that I had never heard about him until, wait for it, a white guy told me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ron Fortier. He knew more about Bass Reeves than I never heard of this guy. Never heard of him. until he told me. And then once I started doing my own research and doing my own digging and everything like that, and I'm glad that he's getting so much attention now because he deserves it.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was like, you forget about it. You talk about guys like Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp and, Doc Holliday and all those other guys. Well, this is a guy that easily was the equal of them.
Right.
Of any of those Western legends that you want to talk about.
And same here. Like, first time I heard about him was through Ron Fortier. Like, I had never heard of this guy before that. And now, a lot of people, like you said, Damon Lindelof is a white guy, and he's probably telling some black people about the Tulsa Massacre, which, like you said, a lot of people didn't know about that. There are probably there are probably still black people out there who don't know about Bass Reeves.
Yeah. Well, listen, I hear from them all the time. Every once in a while, I'll get an email from somebody say, oh, I picked up, the anthology. And I read, I never heard about Bass Reeves before. I said, listen, if you really want to thank me, buy another copy and give it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's serious.
And now what's coming out, too, is you've got Yasuke, the Black Samurai.
Oh, yeah.
Which now they're getting a movie with Chadwick Boseman is playing him.
It's something, again, this is another character I did not know about.
Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting how all this new history is getting uncovered, and how much we're learning about it. But going back to the movie now, what were your let's put aside all the, I think we've kind of talked enough about all the differences between the movie and the comic, but just approaching the movie, like, what were some of your thoughts about the cast?
Okay. A lot of these people I had never seen before, and I was absolutely floored by their performances. I became a fan of Jeffrey Dean Morgan for life, just from this movie. Never seen this guy before, but I say, you know what? I love him.
I first knew Jeffrey Dean Morgan from Supernatural.
Okay,
because he plays Sam and Dean's father in the first 2 seasons.
Okay. See, this is the first, believe it or not, I've never watched Supernatural, even though it's been on my Netflix queue for like years now. I've never watched, so this was the first thing I'd seen him in.
Well, I think this is the last season, so after this, you might as well just binge on all 15 seasons of it.
Yeah. I figure that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait till it's all over, and then I'm just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to take a month and do nothing but watch.
Yeah.
Supernatural. I like Jeffrey Dean Morgan because he's got a nice old school film star type of quality to him. I could have easily seen him back in the 1930s. Yeah. Starring in a movie with, I don't know, Clark Gable or Humphrey Bogart. I could have easily seen him do that. He has that type of quality.
Yeah, he's got this very rugged type of. You know what? I don't know if he's ever been in a Western, and if he hasn't been, then that's a crime. He should really be in a Western.
He definitely should be, because he's got that kind of man's man type of aura.
Right.
Who else?
Jackie Earle Haley.
Oh, Jackie Earle Haley. Jackie Earle Haley. Damn, Dirk, get your tongue together. He steals the movie, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
he steals the movie. He is never anything less than convincing in every scene that he's in.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, he was the only one of the cast who had actually read the book before this movie had even started production, and so he campaigned to play the role of Rorschach. He really wanted this role.
Well, like so many actors, he is an actual comic book geek in real life. He goes to conventions and stuff like that. So, yeah. So I'm not surprised to hear that. He's never anything less than convincing. Mm-hmm.
I sat through the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street just because he was playing Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, me too. Exactly. Know something? That's the only reason why I sat through it.
Yeah,
because know how much I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I had no interest in seeing a remake, but when I heard he was playing Freddy Krueger, I said, okay, well, for him, yeah, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. So then there's Patrick Wilson, who plays Night Owl.
Patrick Wilson was a good choice because Night Owl is kind of like okay, let's face it. He's supposed to be like kind of bland.
Yeah.
And Patrick Wilson can play bland. He's not a bland guy. Okay, I've seen him be more dynamic in other roles, but he knows how to play bland when he has to.
Aquaman, he was great as Ocean Master.
Oh yeah. I mean, totally different role, totally different type of energy and dynamic altogether.
And in the Insidious movies and the Conjuring movies, he was great in those too.
Okay, well, I've never seen those.
Oh, you should definitely check them out. They're really good.
Really?
The first two Conjuring, I think there are only 2 Conjuring movies, and then the first 3 Insidious, or the first 2 Insidious movies.
Okay, well, you know what? Based on your recommendation, I'll check them out.
Because I know the first Conjuring, and I'm not sure about the second one, but definitely the first, and the first 2 Insidious movies, they were all directed by James Wan, who also did Aquaman.
Oh, okay. Well, now in that case, yeah, I definitely got to check it out because that movie was totally off the chain.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited when he was announced for Aquaman, because I'd seen these horror movies he'd done, and he's got a great eye. He's a great director.
He did Saw.
Yeah, he did. I think he did the second one. He did do the first one. You're right. Yeah,
he did the first one. Yeah, he did the first, which I like. And you know me, I'm kind of very hard on horror movies but that Saw, I like the first one.
Okay, see, I didn't really like the first one. I did like the second one, and I don't think I watched any after that.
Okay, well, I've watched like 3 or 4 of them after that, and I couldn't make heads or tails out of. Seriously, they lost me. They just went up their own ass with their continuity and everything like that. Right. I don't see how people keep track of that stuff. But who else were we talking about? Carla Gugino.
Oh yeah, she plays the original Silk Spectre.
Now, she does a wonderful job considering that she has to act through the worst old lady makeup I've ever seen in my life.
Although, if you want the worst makeup in that movie, or basically of all time, I think it's got to be Richard Nixon.
Yeah. Whoever did. I mean, the only way that I can figure that they let that makeup pass is that he's supposed to deliberately look artificial and cartoony.
Well, they excelled at it that way. God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
He doesn't look like a real person at all.
No.
Which maybe is the point. I don't know. Maybe that was the point of it. But yeah, that was some terrible makeup. But as always, she's one of my favorite actresses. Mm-hmm. And she makes the character sleazy yet sympathetic.
I think that's kind of the issue. Like, she does a great job with what she's given, but I've got a problem with what she was given because, like, the whole thing about Sally Jupiter in the comic is, and I know I said we were going to take it away from the comparisons, but I just wanted to get this out. But, it's that Sally Jupiter is, this kind of tragic figure who's kind of burnt out, and you do feel like a lot of pity for her. Whereas in the movie, I don't really feel that same sense of pity for Carla Gugino because she's very sharp. She's almost too sharp, I think. Yeah, she's very calculating. She's very manipulative.
Right. And I really do have kind of a problem with that whole. Well, I got a problem with rape scenes anyway.
Well, I mean,
for a variety of reasons.
And that's kind of a problem with that's one criticism that you can have of pretty much all Alan Moore's work is that dude loves his rape scenes.
Yeah.
I remember a few years back when they were doing Before Watchmen, and he was complaining about how nobody ever did a sequel to Moby Dick. And I was thinking, well, this is the guy who did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and took like Cinderella and Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and put them in a porno comic. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, the only reason nobody's done a sequel to Moby Dick is because Alan Moore hasn't found a realistic way for someone to rape a whale.
And in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, didn't he have the Invisible Man running around raping?
Yeah, the Invisible Man was running around raping people, and then
he was going around to girls' schools and raping whole.
And then Mr. Hyde raped the Invisible Man.
Some guys like rape. What can I tell you? Apparently, but. In the movie, there is the hint that she was a willing participant.
Yeah.
In the attempted rape.
Which is
then,
also
of course,
another disturbing addition by Snyder.
And then, of course, later on, Laurie finds out that, apparently her mother and, she hooked up with the comedian and she's their daughter. Right. So which also adds another disturbing layer on an already disturbing situation that, so, hey, but it is what it is. But she's one of my favorite actresses. I love her and anything, as well as being a flat out gorgeous woman, period. Who else? I'm trying to think of any performance that really
who did Dr. Manhattan.
Oh, he was good. Yeah, he was good too. You know what? It couldn't have been easy doing that role because he has to play so much. He only has a little short bit where they show how he became Dr. Manhattan. Right. Where he's human and he gets to act as a human being because for most of the movie, he's this big glowing blue guy, So it couldn't have been easy doing that. But you know what? I think that a lot of these actors now, they have found a whole new style of acting simply because so much of movies now are dependent on CGI. Yeah. And stuff like that. So it's a whole new style of acting that they've had to evolve into.
And Dr. Manhattan's whole thing is that he's supposed to be like really distant and separated. And I think like some of this might be down to CGI, but just like his facial expressions, he's able to stay like almost completely neutral no matter what's going on around him. And I thought he did a really good job. Like I think him and Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Jackie Earle Haley are probably like the three best performances in this movie. And I think probably the closest to what we see in the comic book because, Wilson does a good job as Dryberg, but he's not really the kind of sad sack that Dryberg is supposed to be.
Right, yeah. He's a little bit too good looking.
A little bit too good looking, a little bit too confident. And then we got that ridiculous way they showed the sex scene with the Hallelujah song playing over it. Like, it was just...
Oh, my God. And then they have the orgasm that lights up the sky, literally.
Which, to be fair, was in the comic. But the way that Snyder films it is it's just like this very, like, slow motion. It's putting a lot of emphasis on it. And it's just... You're taking the wrong idea, and you just make it look cheesy after that.
But again, like I said, and there was some other movie that we were talking about. There's some things that you can have in a comic book and it works. Mm-hmm. But when you see it in a live act, it's just because I remember that when we went to see it and she hits the flamethrower and it goes like that. I mean, people laughed. Yeah. Because it was like, okay, come on. It's a little bit, but if you read the comic book panel, you guys like kind of just go over it.
Right. It's kind of like the famous scene, the famous sex scene from Steranko's Nick Fury. Yeah. Where it's just like these series of images. And it works because it's static. So you can show them in quick succession like that, and it tells you everything that's going on without showing you. But you can't really do that in a movie.
Exactly. But she hits her. And then in order to make his point even more, he cuts to a scene where the people that are on the street, they look up and they see, this phallic shaped. And people look and say, well, what the hell is that? And it's shaped like a phallus. Yeah. Huh? What? I said, okay, dude, we get it. Yeah. It was good. It was good for the both of them. We got it. Oh, my Lord.
And then I guess the last two. So there's Malin Ackerman, who played Laurie.
I like her.
I'm trying to think of what else she's been in. Like, because I know I've heard her name before, and I can't think of anything else I've seen her in.
She's been in a couple of movies. She's never been in anything as high profile as this, though. Okay. I remember seeing her something. She dyed her hair blonde, and she was in a couple of comedies. She's been in a couple of TV series. She's still around. She's still acting. Yeah. But this was like her first major role, and she's never really been in anything as high profile as this.
Oh, I see shit on that new show, Dollface, that Hulu keeps recommending to me, so maybe I should check that out.
Yeah.
No, not good?
I don't know. I don't have Hulu.
Oh, okay.
My wife watches Hulu, but I refuse to watch any streaming service where I'm paying you and I still get commercials.
Oh, they've got I pay the higher tier, so I don't get the commercials.
Well, you're rich.
Yeah, right. She had a small part in How I Met Your Mother, but I think that's the only thing in here that I've ever seen her in besides Watchmen.
Okay. I know I saw her in one movie with that chick from The Good Place. What's her name? She was in some comedy with Kristen Bell, I remember.
Oh, okay.
She was blonde in that one, though. She had dyed her hair blonde.
Oh, she was in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
She had Leanne, who's probably one of the small characters that appears. She was also in, was it 27 Dresses? Was that it?
Who was in that one? I think I saw that one.
I think that was the one with. I think it was Katherine Heigl was in that. That was one of her movies?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then I saw it. Right. That was like the only successful movie Katherine Heigl was in before she proceeded. No,
she was in Knocked Up, and then after that she got too full of herself.
Who? Katherine Heigl? Yeah. Yeah, she made the mistake of starting to believe her own press.
Right, yeah. And you know what? You don't piss off Shonda Rhimes.
No, you don't do that. Otherwise, you end up doing dog food commercials. No lie, which is the last thing I saw Katherine Heigl doing. Serious, she was doing dog food commercials.
Oh, wow. I mean, like, Malin Ackerman, like, I think a lot of it is just due to the way the role was written because... You know, like I said, they took a lot of Laurie's backstory out of the movie. It wasn't in the movie that you find in the comics, so it's kind of hard to sympathize with her character because of that. And then last is Matthew Good as Ozymandias.
You know what? Here's a guy who's supposed to be the pivotal character of the whole piece because he's the mastermind behind the whole plot.
Right.
So this guy is supposed to be, like you said, that he's supposed to be very charismatic, very confident, you know, like a Robert Redford or like a Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
But in the movie, you know, he comes off as very stiff, very cold,
very smarmy. Like he's central. He's a central casting villain. So like when you see him, like you know that he's gonna be the villain. Right.
He's supposed to be the guy that you look at. Okay, like remember, going back to a better movie, Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
You didn't know Robert Redford was the bad guy until he revealed he was the bad guy.
Right. Or also taking it to Iron Man, you had Jeff Bridges in the first Iron Man movie.
Jeff Bridges, right, again. Okay, you didn't know he was the bad guy until he was the bad, and then you said, oh shit, he's the bad guy, which is what you're supposed to do. But the way this guy plays Ozymandias, you know right from the start, this cat is sketchy.
Well, I mean, like one of the ways they show this is when they talk about his origin story, because in the comics, right, it's just in his narration he presents it. But in the show, in the movie, he tells it when he's talking to these oil company executives, and it gives a completely different interpretation because now it seems like he's bragging instead of the reader finding out about his background.
I can see that. Okay. Now I'm replaying the scene in my head. Yeah. I remember because one of the guys is supposed to be Lee Iacocca that he's talking to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I like the concept of the character. Yeah. Especially he gets one of the best bad guy scenes where he's explaining his master plot, and then Rorschach and Night Owl is saying, okay, well, we're going to stop you. And he says, stop me? He said, what, do you think I was going to tell you my plan in time for you to stop? He said, I did that shit 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I love that because it turns the whole thing on his head. Because of course I'm going to tell you my world conquering scheme when there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You know, this isn't a James Bond movie. Right. I'm going to give you 30 minutes to start. No, I did that shit 30 minutes ago.
Which is the problem because Matthew Goode comes off as a James Bond villain.
Basically, he does. He instead of coming off as the type of messiah that he thinks he is, he thinks he's the savior of mankind. But yeah, he comes off as more like a James Bond villain.
And now you contrast him with Jeremy Irons. Like, even though Jeremy Irons is playing a clearly deranged version of Adrian, he's still got that charisma.
Right, exactly. Charisma. And you know what? So much depends on a good villain having charisma.
Right.
At least that's what I think. Those are the ones that we remember, the ones that have charisma, the ones that, you know, even though they're doing horrendous, monstrous things, you're saying, damn, yeah, but he's such a nice guy, though. You know, how can he do it? The guy in this movie, yeah, he comes, I mean... And it goes back to something else that you were saying, too, that he doesn't look right. But I think that they did that to throw you off so you wouldn't think, if you had never read the graphic novel, you wouldn't think he was the one that kills the comedian.
That could be it, too, yeah. But
that's why he's so thin and puny looking.
Right, but I think
he is puny looking. He is.
And I think that actually has more to do with... like I said, the stuff I brought up before about Snyder reading too much into the line from the comic about Rorschach thinking he's gay.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you factor that in with the Batman and Robin style costume and like the Studio 54 shot, the boys thing on the computer, like it all seems like they're trying really hard to make you say like this guy's gay and he's evil.
No, I got you. Yeah. Good point.
Which seems like, again, Zack Snyder's got some deep-seated homophobia issues that I think you should probably see a psychiatrist about.
Well, he's got a lot of issues that I think that he should see. Although, you know, I sympathize with the guy because he had a horrendous loss that nobody should suffer.
Yeah, so that obviously,
you know, and then he had to go through all that shit that people was throwing at him online. But, you know, people are dicks, and what are you going to do? Right. You know, I mean, I do wish him well in his future career because the man is an extraordinarily talented filmmaker.
He is.
You know.
He just needs to do a better job of picking projects. Like his Dawn of the Dead remake was great.
Yeah. And you know what? That's probably still his best movie.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's his best movie. And I saw Sucker Punch, and as I said in my review, that, you know what? That was a movie. He should have put that script on the shelf and waited about another 10 or 15 years once he built up the creative muscle to pull off that type of storytelling. Because it was a very ambitious thing he was trying to do. Not that I knock him. I will always give props to somebody that tries to be a little bit more ambitious and maybe reach for something that's a little bit out of their reach instead of playing it safe, you know. Because I think that he had something there with Sucker Punch, but he didn't have enough creative muscle to, you know, pull it off. But I mean, he's got an extraordinary eye for detail. He knows how to work with actors. He knows how to get great performances out of actors, and you know, he's an important filmmaker, and I do believe that with all of its flaws, and it does have flaws, people. I'm not going, you know, I love the movie. It's got flaws, but I will always, if somebody ever says to me, give me a list of what superhero movies I should see, Watchmen is always going to be in the top 10.
Okay. Yeah, see, I definitely would not put it on that list for the reasons we talked about today. But one other thing to talk about with this movie is the way they changed, the biggest change they made to the movie, and that's the ending, where instead of this giant squid, he makes it look like Dr. Manhattan committed all these attacks. What were some of your thoughts about changing that?
You know what? I understood why they did it, because the whole squid thing, let's face it, that would have been too complicated to explain.
And I think it's tough to explain the squid thing without having the benefit of all the background stuff. Because in the comic, there's so much in the background that's building up to it. And if they were doing, this is why it should be a miniseries, because if they were doing this over the course of 10 to 12 episodes, they can seed that stuff into the background. You can't really do that as convincingly with the movie.
Yeah, you'd have time to explain the squid.
Yeah.
But in the context of the movie, no, people would have been more confused than they already were. A squid? What? But the whole notion of him manipulating events to make Dr. Manhattan look like the bad guy and get him off Earth. And that's how the nations of the world. I said, you know something? That was pretty damn clever. I know people that will die on that hill that, he shouldn't have changed the ending. If he was going to change the ending, he should have never did the movie. But I understand why he did it. And for me, it works.
You know what? When I first saw the movie, I thought it worked really well. This last time I'm watching, and I still don't think the squid would have worked as well. So I still think there's something that they had to change with that. But I also, the more I think about the Dr. Manhattan thing, is the more it's still just, something's just not clicking. Whereas I don't see why, the Soviet Union wouldn't just turn around and blame it on the U.S. Because even though it attacked the U.S. as well, Dr. Manhattan was still a creation of the U.S. The U.S. took advantage of it. So I still think there'd be a lot of animosity to work through that's not there when you have an alien invasion. So while I get it, I think it does create some story problems, so it doesn't quite work. But I also see why the squid wouldn't have worked either.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you got to go with the squid or you got to go with Dr. Manhattan. And I think it was clever of them that they sat down and actually, because you know what? It would have been an easy way. Okay. First of all, you couldn't have the U.S. and the Soviet Union go to war. Mm-hmm. You couldn't have it because then now everybody would say, well, you're setting it up for a sequel because, what are you going to, okay, well, the world ends.
Yeah.
Is that it? So they had to figure out something that would be in the spirit of the original story. And I think that with the Dr. Manhattan solution, that's what they did. They were in the spirit, because they had to end up with the United States and the Soviet Union not going to war and the world uniting.
Right. It's a solution. It's an imperfect solution, but it solves the problem.
And since Dr. Manhattan is the only real super being that's on the planet, well, if you're going to, if you want to change the planet, this is what you do. You get rid of the guy that indeed did change the planet.
Yeah.
Get rid of him. And then humanity has nothing to rely on except itself. It can't rely on Dr. Manhattan anymore.
Right. So yeah, I can see it, but it's just they were definitely stuck between a rock and a hard place with that ending.
Oh,
and I sympathize with them. I'm not sure if they could have done something better, even though I think I would have liked to see something done better with it. But it is what it is, and it mostly works. There's some questions left hanging at the end, but it mostly does the job.
I'm pretty sure, because they keep mentioning him throughout the TV series, I'm pretty sure that at some point, sooner or later, they are going to address the Dr. Manhattan issue, because he's still up there on Mars, doing God knows what.
Well, I think there's one theory that he's actually on Earth, and that one of the theories is that he's actually Angela's husband.
That's interesting. Yeah, because they had that whole conversation about, well, couldn't he change the color of his skin and, pretend that he was a human being? How come he couldn't do that?
Plus, Cal is reading the book about the Tulsa riots.
Right.
So there's a lot of different, but he could also be he could be Lube Man, the guy who's wearing that bodysuit and squirts himself in lube and slides into the sewer.
That shit was so funny.
You know what? I kind of hope they never explain that guy.
So if they never explain Lube Man, I'll be just as happy. It was worth it for the expression on Angela's face. She's like, what the fuck?
I'm half convinced that wasn't even planned. They didn't tell Regina King anything about this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right, because the expression of her face is just like, I mean, if she was acting, and she is a damn good actress. That was damn good. But she looked just as surprised as I felt. Because I really was not expecting that guy to do that. Yeah. So if they never explain who Luke Man was, they should just have him show up every couple of episodes to do that.
You remember how in Buffy and Angel, like in the end credits, they had the cartoon vampire crossing the screen going grr r?
Yeah.
They should just have end every episode with just like Lube Man skating across the screen.
Yeah. Oh man, that thing was hilarious. I must have laughed for about 10 minutes behind that because I had DVR'd the episode and I paused it and I reran it and I paused it, I reran it again, and I was cracking up every time I reread just from the expression on Regina King's face. And I'm with you. I'm how convinced they didn't tell her exactly what was going on. They told us something, but they didn't tell exactly what they were going to do. And they actually got somebody to actually do that.
Yeah. That show is so amazing. It's doing a great job of really kind of bringing the story into the modern age. And like, I never thought a sequel to Watchmen could be this rewarding.
I never thought that they would do a sequel, period. And if they did do one, I did not think they were going to do it this well.
Well, also what surprised me is they're 100% committed to this is a sequel to the comic book. And they're not doing any hand-holding in this at all. Like, I mean, the first episode, they've got a squid rain.
Yeah.
And then I think was it the last one or the one before that when they had, they actually showed the squid on screen. And like, not even the comic showed the squid in full detail like that.
When they did the origin of Looking Glass.
Yes, so it was the 5th episode.
Yeah, because he was in New Jersey when the squid dropped.
Right.
And that's what they did. Yeah, they actually showed the squid. You know, and I said, oh shit. I said, now that's cool. I never thought they were going to do that, but yeah, they showed the squid. Thank goodness.
Yeah, you know, I've seen so many people asking online, like, well, wait, what's all this? I thought this was a sequel to the movie. Like, no, it's not a sequel to the movie. Go buy the book.
It's not. They were very clear. Although there are some things that they mentioned that did happen in the movie, but yeah, they're very committed that this is a sequel to the original graphic novel. Yeah, not the movie. But there are some things in there, you know.
And it's also doing, like, you know, we were talking about the supplemental stuff in the comics. They've got supplemental stuff for the TV show, too. They've got, what's his name? Agent Petey, who's working with Laurie. He's got his own, like, they're putting, like, his files and his reports and also, like, his reviews of the American Hero story. They are being put up online as supplementary stuff.
Oh, really? Yeah. I didn't know about that. Okay. I have to check that out.
But yeah, I think that about brings us to the end of Watchmen. Do you have any final things you wanted to say about it?
Only that, like all of the movies that we've been doing up till now, we said when we started out, we were going to do movies that were what we considered to be like the touchstones, movies that changed the game. Mm-hmm. And this was a movie that indeed changed the game because just like the graphic novel, this was a mature, intelligent, adult superhero movie that explored other things. It was not about people in costumes just going out and beating up on other people in costumes. It's a movie that actually does try to say something about society and the psychology of damaged people who think they're changing the world for the better. Because I think that there is something inherently noble in people who try to do things to uplift the planet and other people, and then they fail through their own flaws. Mm-hmm. You know, and these are people who do try, for the most part, you know, most of them do try to do their best. Mm-hmm. But you know, it just doesn't work out that way. And yeah, this is a movie that says to us, you know what, we are better off in the real world looking to ourselves to handle our own problems and not for, blue skin gods or people in costumes to keep us safe. And, we can keep ourselves safe. We can take care of our planet. We can take care of each other. We don't need people in costumes to do it for us. So.
I mostly agree with you, although I'd quibble on the intel. I think most of what you said applies more to the comic. I probably wouldn't go as far as using those same words to describe the movie, but I can agree with most of what you're saying there.
Okay, that's good enough for me. You don't have to agree. You have to agree with me all the time.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't hate this movie. Like, I know some people who love Watchmen the comic who absolutely despise everything about the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's entertaining. It's very watchable, but when I'm thinking about it's kind of like when we were talking about, Constantine, right, with Keanu Reeves. Very entertaining movie, a lot of fun to watch, but it's not a Hellblazer movie. I kind of get the same thing about Watchmen, where it's entertaining, it can be fun to watch, it's very stylish, but it's not Watchmen for me. When I try to think of it as an adaptation of Watchmen, it just, I get that hollow feeling that I don't get when I watch the TV show.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, definitely the TV show has got something there that the movie doesn't.
Well, I think one of the things is that the TV show is trying to recreate the spirit of the comic book, whereas the movie was trying to recreate the panels of the comic book. And I watched the Ultimate Cut, which had the Black Freighter segments edited into the movie, and it kind of illustrates what's wrong with Snyder's approach and why it doesn't quite work, because Snyder's just putting these images up on the screen, but he's kind of missing the point of why the Black Freighter segments are there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, he's more interested in recreating, the look of the graphic novel.
Right.
Because, there are some panels that are recreated exactly in this movie, but that isn't what the point of adaptation should be,
right?
To just recreate everything exactly as it was. But this movie is Zack Snyder's vision of what Watchmen is, whereas the TV series, that's Damon Lindelof enhancing Alan Moore's vision of what the original source material was.
I think one of the biggest weaknesses that Zack Snyder has when he's approaching adaptations is that he's more concerned with the look, and he never asked the question why. He never asked, why did Frank Miller draw Batman in this way? He never asked, why did Dave Gibbons render this scene this way? And I think that weakness is kind of why his adaptations of these superhero properties haven't really worked. Because it's one thing if you're doing, 300, and I never read 300, the graphic novel, so I can't speak much to how well or he adapted it or not, but it is visually, he does a lot of what Robert Rodriguez did with Sin City, where he's basically putting the panels up on the screen. But I think that kind of approach works a little bit more with Sin City, maybe with 300 as well. With Watchmen, with these other characters, you need to ask the question, why are they doing it this way?
Yeah. I see where you're going. Yeah, good point.
All right, so now that we're pretty much done talking about Watchmen, next movie is your pick. So what are we going to be watching next?
Okay, I'm going to see if I can find it. If I can find it, I'm pretty sure I can find it on YouTube, or maybe it'll be on Amazon Prime. But what I would like to do is go back to the good old days of TV.
Okay.
The last movie I picked was Doctor Strange. And what I want to do next is a movie that a lot of people, I think, through my humble efforts, have come around to saying, you know what, it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about the David Hasselhoff version of Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing this when it was when it first aired on TV way long ago, and yeah, you know what? I gotta say that I remember most of it is just standard, low budget TV stuff. But Hasselhoff, surprisingly, I remember doing a really good job as Fury.
Yeah, that's one of the things that like I said, I'm going to see if I can find it, and if I can find it, and because it's been a while since I've seen it, and I used to have it on DVD. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. A lot of my shit is missing for some reason, because I had it on DVD. I can't find the DVD, but yeah, David Hasselhoff, his performance. I don't want to go into it. I want to save it for but. If you've read the Jim Steranko, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., that's definitely who David Hasselhoff is playing.
And I haven't seen the movie since I read Steranko's Fury, so I'm kind of looking forward to going back and seeing how it compares now that I know more about the character. Because when I watched the movie, I did not know a whole lot about Nick Fury because I'd only ever seen him as a supporting character and stuff in comics. I'd never really seen any of his solo stuff at that time.
Right. Well, for somebody like me that grew up reading as a matter of fact, I am on my third copy of the trade paperback of the Steranko Nick Fury, because I read and reread it so much that pages fall out.
Man, you should just buy the digital version at this point.
That's how much. No, I got to hold it in my hand. I got to cradle it. I got to rock it to sleep at night.
Okay, I think some of that allergy medicine's kind of going to your head a little bit now because you're getting a little bit too intimate with Steranko's Fury.
Oh, it's just one of my all-time favorite. One of my all-time favorite. If not, no, actually, my favorite is Tomb of Dracula.
Okay.
The Gene Colan, Marv Wolfman. Mm-hmm. That and Howard the Duck.
Okay.
And then after that, probably Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay. All right. So that about wraps it up for us. You can head on over to the Facebook group, Superhero Cinephiles. You know what? We might as well have a discussion about Watchmen because I think it might be one of the most controversial superhero movies ever made. So pop on over and let us know what you think about it, what you think about this. If you can tell us to go to hell, you can tell us that you agree with us, whatever you like.
And when you discuss this, we're still going to do the Watchmen TV episode once the season is over, right? Yeah,
eventually.
Want to do that, right?
After the series is over, we'll sit down and we'll talk in depth about the first season and see how it all stacks up.
Yeah, because a couple of people had asked me when I said that we were going to do this. They said, "Oh, you're going to talk about TV series?" Well, I said, well, of course we're going to mention it probably. I said, but we're going to try to wait until the season is over, and we're going to save everything for one episode where we can really go into detail and talk about just the series.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's just the whole thing, yeah.
All right, so head on over to the website, drop us a review, superherocinephiles.com. Also, I've now set up a Patreon page for us, so you can kick us. Yeah, I mean, we don't have any perks or anything on there yet, but I just threw it up there. But if you like the show, if you like what you're listening to, then chip in $1 or something here because
give us money.
Yeah, because. And that helps pay for the hosting of the show and for other stuff we need to put it together. So anything you can chip in, just please do. And you can find all that on the website.
Perry is going to be polite about it, but I'm a greedy capitalist. Give us money. There we go.
There we go, yeah. All right. Thanks so much. And also Super Cinema Pod on Twitter. And that's all from us. Thanks. And next time we'll be talking about Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay, thank you, folks. Good night. God bless. Oh, and I hope y'all guys had a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Bye. Thanks for listening listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, or if you have a superhero movie or TV show you'd like us to cover in a future episode, you can email us at superherocinephiles@gmail.com, or you can also visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com. If you like what you hear, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Each review helps us reach more potential listeners. You can also support the show by renting or purchasing the movies discussed, or by picking up our books, all of which can be accessed through the website, as well as find links to our social media presences. The theme music for this show is a shortened version of Superhero Showdown, a royalty-free piece of music courtesy of